Welcome along to part 5 of this 5-part series about queen rearing. This video is going to be about taking queen cells through to being mated queens. I use mating hives to let my queens go out and get free mated. I use two kinds of mating hives, 2-frame mating hives and 5-frame nukes. Before I show you the mating boxes and hives, I just want to talk about some numbers. It may be obvious to most of you, but for some of you this will be new. If you want 100 mated queens, you're not going to get them by grafting 100 cells. If you graft 100 cells, you're going to get about 80 virgin queens. That's typical, average. It doesn't really matter if you're a really fantastic grafter or not. You're going to struggle over a long period of time to do better than that. If you put 80 virgin queens into mating hives, only 85% of them are going to get mated successfully and come back, because they have to fly off out into nowhere to look for hive congregation areas to get mated. And on that journey out and on the way back, they can get hit by a car, eaten by a bird, or they can get lost coming back. So 85% is a pretty normal return rate, but again, that's an average. You might get higher, you might get lower. Weather plays a big role in it. So if you start with 100 grafted queen cells and 80% of them end up being viable virgin queens, and then of those 80 virgin queens only 85% come back, your 100 grafted cells is going to end up being 68 mated queens. If I turn that round the other way, if you want 100 mated queens at the end of the process, you actually have to graft 150 cells. Graft 50% more than the number of mated queens that you're trying to create in what you're doing. Now I'm going to show you what the mating hives that I run look like and how I manage them. If you've watched any of my other videos, you'll have seen in the background these little boxes sitting on stands, and these are my 2-frame mating hives. There are 4 in each box, and they have entrances on all 4 sides so that the queens can come and go. The start of the process is to populate the hives, so I take brood and put them into them, and along with a frame that has a little bit of honey in it. Then I gather up some additional bees. I shake them into a bucket, and I don't mind. In fact, I actually want any bees that are going to fly away to fly away, because they are the field bees and they're not going to hang around. What I'm looking for here is nurse bees. And I always put in far more than I think I'm going to need, because nurse bees are the only ones that hang on behind. So the numbers will dwindle down, particularly if you do what I'm doing here, which is to populate mating hives in the same yard as the source of the original bees. If you take them 5 kilometres away, then all the bees should hang about and stay. So I just chuck that bucket away there, because any bees that are on it, I wanted them to fly back to their hive. I'm spreading those bees out a bit, and then I put the individual little wee mini narrow inner covers back. So each of those 2-frame hives has got its own inner cover. Here I'm putting queens into these mating hives. These are queens that have just been taken out of the incubator, and some of them had emerged and ended up in queen cells. If you watch my previous video about using an incubator, you'll understand what I'm talking about. So I'm grabbing some attendant bees to put into the queen cell. I don't want to walk a virgin queen straight into this hive because I've just put it together. Therefore those bees still think they're queen right, If a virgin queen has walked into there right now, there's a good chance that they'll kill her. So to avoid that, I use a mating cage, and I introduce that allows the hive to become queenless and then to accept that queen, that virgin queen, as their queen. Or they'll either accept her or they'll just ignore her, and then they'll accept her as their queen when she comes back mated and starts, her queen pheromones start getting stronger. So in this particular box where there are 4 mating hives, I've put one in a queen cage, and then I think I'll just speed things up here so it doesn't take so long. The next hive also gets a queen cage in it. I'm catching more attendant bees there, and just pop her in. Of course, the end of the queen cage has been popped off so that the bees can eat their way in through that queen candy. For these next 2, I'm going to populate them with queen cells, ones that haven't emerged yet. And if you see, they've got those little orange guards on them that protects the queen cell and stops the bees in that hive from tearing it down until that queen has emerged. Just drinking my coffee with honey in it so that I can talk faster and sound more interesting. On top of the hives, I have these little discs with numbers on them. I call those Fraser bees indicator discs. I'll do a separate video explaining what the deal is with those. I also write on the top of the box the graft number, which is quite important, because when I'm going back through checking them again, a combination of what is on that disc plus that graft number tells me everything I need to know about what stage that graft is, that queen mating process is before I even open the lid and go in. A really important step here to help these queens get mated is to keep the hives well fed. So I use these glass feeders. You see the lids have got 4 or 5 holes punched in them, and I just put 1-to-1 syrup into the glass jars and tip them over so that the bees can come up through the hole in the inner cover, through the hole in the lid, which at the moment is blocked with those little red plugs, but before I put the feeders on, I'll pull the plugs and then tip the feeders over. The very first time that I put a feeder into a hive that's just gone into a box, I actually tip the feeder over and allow the dribble that happens when you tip up a feeder like that to go down into the box, just so that the bees can smell some syrup above them and know it's up there. After that, I don't do that, because the less sugar syrup you can spill around the hive when you're feeding them, the better. So I actually hold the feeder upside down away from the hive and let it dribble out onto the ground, and then put it on top of the hive. So now we're jumping forward in time. Well, actually what we've done is we've jumped over to a different box, and I'm looking for a queen for a customer who wants a mated queen. So I'm going into this hive because I suspect that there will be a queen that's ready to sell in here, and when I look at it, I see there's a beautiful patch of brood in there, which means the queen in this hive is laying up a storm and she's ready to go. So I don't sell my queens until I can see that they're producing a good, healthy brood pattern, which means that they've been mated properly and that they don't have any problems. It's not there was a few empty cells in that pattern, but not very many. So now I've gone away and got a queen cage. I'm going into that hive now to look for the queen, and I've done a video about finding queens. If you watch how long I spend studying the frame looking for the queen, you'll see it's not very long. I just scan my eyes over one side, and then if I don't see a queen, if she doesn't leap out at me, I flip it over, scan the other side. If I don't see a queen there, I put that one to one side. I can always come back. It's not unusual that you scan right past the queen and miss her the first time round, but I find the more I do it, the more often I find the queen. Now I'm looking at the third of 4 frame sides. I'm starting to think I must have missed her on that other frame, because that's where all the brood was. But when I flip it over to the 4th and last side, I see a queen. So I lay the frame down on the hive top gently. I take my gloves off because I want to handle the queen. Notice when I put my gloves down, I push them down. I'm closing them off to stop bees going into my gloves, because I've been stung a number of times pulling my gloves back on afterwards. So I've caught the queen, and I pop her into the queen cage that I went to get, and then I add 5 attendant bees. I just walked around the other side of the hive there to give you a better angle to have a look at and see what I'm doing. Notice I'm right-handed. I've discovered that I catch bees better with my left hand. Don't ask me why, it's just the way it is. If I have too many cups of coffee, then I do find that my hands get a little bit of a shake. I think that's pretty normal. So now here's the most important part of this process. That hive is now queenless. So I go over and I alter my little dial. That will then be assigned to me when I get my next lot of queen cells, that I have to go in there and put a new queen cell into that hive. If there's a big space of time between when I have to take a queen out to sell her or to put her into a hive, one of my own hives, and when I have queen cells available, then there is a possibility that hive will start making its own queens. If that happens, I go in and tear those queen cells down, because I don't want emergency queens in my yard. I want all the queens that I sell and that I use myself to be grafted queens, because they're a better quality. So this is a 5-frame nuke. It's a 3/4 nuke, and I'm simply opening it up here to show you that even though it's a 5-frame nuke, the population of bees in here is actually quite small. But that's more than adequate to allow a queen to go off and get mated and come back and to start producing brood. And in fact, this hive, I have already sold out of this hive 1 mated queen. There's another queen there. She's got a yellow dot on her back because she was a virgin queen that I put in there, so she was marked when I put her in. That's not very good focus. And I have got that queen sold already, but she's laying eggs, but she's not produced a good pattern of brood yet, so I've told the person who wants that queen that he can't get her until I'm satisfied that she's laying properly. So I've told him it's going to be at least another week before I can make that call. He's actually coming this afternoon to pick up 2 queens, and his other 2 queens will be coming hopefully in a week's time. This is another mating nuke that's right on almost the same location as the one we've just looked at, and again I'm just popping it open so that you can see that there's not a huge population of bees in there. Now if I'm making nukes to sell as nukes, I make them obviously far stronger than this, and if that queen for any reason doesn't, this queen here is also sold, but if for any reason there is a queen there, oh yes, there we go. When I was editing this, I had to look about 4 times before I saw that queen. If I'm selling nukes, I make them much, much stronger. If this hive, if the queen hadn't sold it would build up and build up and build up. If I wanted to turn it into a nuke, I'll just stop there and point out that there's some dead brood in there because I boosted that hive and a lot of the bees left and there weren't enough bees to keep that brood warm. It's not a problem, those bees will clean that out. I could turn this little weak nuke into a strong nuke by boosting it with another frame of brood and lots more bees, and then coming back a few weeks later and doing the same again, and within a month I could turn this into a strong 5-frame nuke. So it's not very complicated. The process of turning a queen cell into a mated queen simply involves allowing the virgin queen to go off and get mated and come back. The location that you do that is really important. I have a lot of hives in my backyard at mating time. I have 64 2-frame mating nukes. I have so many in my backyard for 2 reasons. One, these small hives, 2 frames, are quite management intensive. You've got to manage the amount of food that's in them. You want them to always have nectar so that they can survive cold weather, but at the same time you don't want them over crammed with nectar and plugged out. So sometimes I'll have the feeders on, sometimes I'll take the feeders off, and that might change from day to day. The other reason is that the location that you put mating hives is dependent on the presence of good drones in the district. You can physically arrange that by bringing hives with the right genetic drones into the area, or, as is more common, you find out from trial and error which locations produce well-mated queens with the right traits that you want, meaning that there must be bees in the area that have got good genetics that your queens are going off and mating with. I have found that the queens that I mate in my own backyard turn out to be excellent queens. It might sound a bit excessive having 64 mating hives plus 4 big hives in an urban setting, but those 64 mating hives really don't have as many more bees in them than one full-sized hive in the middle of summer. So it's not that big a deal. Certainly I don't have bees buzzing around all over the place. My bees are well behaved. Well, that wraps up this 5-part series. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, this is the first time I've asked you to do this in all 5 videos, hit the like button, press subscribe, and come back and see the future videos that I'm going to produce. Thanks for watching.